Good morning, Jerry. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, Paul. Doing well, thank you.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, yeah, let's start by having you share a little bit about your personal background and then Western Precision Products.
All right, personal background. I've worked for Western Precision Products essentially my entire life. I started here when I was 10. It's a family business. Our dad started it in the summertime when I was out of school. So it all started with, "Hey, you want to go to work with me?"
Mm-hmm.
And the rest is kind of history. What 10-year-old doesn't want to go to work with their dad? So
Of course.
started going with him. Washing parts, deburring parts. He always put me to work. Um,
At what age did you start running machines?
oh gosh. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
OSHA's not listening.
Right. Actually, there are these induction hardened pins that we were drilling a hole in the end of and on a Bridgeport.
Oh,
And I
wow.
was short enough that I had to reach all the way up over my head to grab the quill
Uh-huh.
lever. So
Okay.
yeah, I was
So that was young.
pretty young. Yeah. And then I'd start programming, messing around after hours when I was, I don't know, 13, in that area. We had machines that were conversational programming, so it was easy to go out to the machine when it wasn't running and
Okay.
just start messing around. And it drew on the screen, so you could see what was going on.
Very cool. Wow. That's an early start. Awesome. And then, yeah, how did that progress?
Um, so I always worked summers and holiday breaks and whatnot, and then worked through high school a couple days a week after school. And then I ended up going to college for information systems. Thought that was going to be my path. And then when I was a junior, our dad called me up and he said, "Hey, can I come down and go to lunch with you?" And first thing that came to my mind was, "Uh-oh, dad wants to take me to lunch and talk about something. That's not good."
Mm-hmm.
So we went to lunch and he said, "Hey, Jerry, I know you're doing this information systems thing. That's totally fine. But I want you to know that coming to work for the company would be an option if you'd like. No pressure. That's all I'm going to say. Think about it." All
That's
right.
a nice way to put it.
Yeah, there was never any pressure to,
Right.
that was never my, defined path per se.
He just opened the door wide open, but let you decide which door you wanted to take.
Exactly.
That's
So
wonderful.
I thought about it, and then it's what I knew. Machine
Mm-hmm.
shop, grew up in it, so I thought I love it. I'm good at it, so why not just stick with it? So I went to work full time after college for the company with no intentions of owning it. I
Mm-hmm.
thought maybe someday,
Right.
and then my brother and I ended up purchasing it from our dad in 2004.
2004. Okay. How old
Yeah,
would you have been approximately then?
25. 20,
25. Okay.
yeah,
You're a
25.
young shop owner. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Um, my brother and partner, he's 11 years older than me,
Okay.
and
Okay.
we've always had different emphasis in the business. I was always very manufacturing oriented, technology, programming, whereas he was always managerial. That's the world that he came from. He came
Mm-hmm.
from the sort of corporate management end
Right.
of things, which worked out well for us because we never had a reason to butt heads.
Sure.
He's
You had your
just
specialties.
Yeah, we just had our
Yeah.
specialties and we trust each other, and
Right.
it's worked well.
Okay. And he's still a partner today?
He is still a partner, yes.
Okay. Very good. And so, what did the company maybe describe the company today? And I'm going to turn off as the train goes by. Describe what the company looks like.
Okay, we have around 60 employees. We do about $13 million a year. The main industries we serve are space, aerospace, commercial and military aircraft, electronic hardware components, so heat sinks, brackets, things that hold, electronics. Test and measurement industry, so think spectrum analyzers, high-end oscilloscopes, things like that. We make mechanical parts that go in those. Um,
As far as machines, yeah, what are your specialties there?
we have a lot of four-axis horizontal machines. We have
Okay.
11 of them, four of them with pallet pools, one with 36 pallets, two with 5 pallets, one with 6 pallets. And we recently purchased a 5-axis pallet pool machine
Oh, nice.
that we're very excited about.
Yeah.
And then we have, CNC lathe turning, mill turn, Swiss turning.
Swiss as well. Okay.
Yeah,
So very diversified.
yeah.
Awesome.
Very emphasis is mostly in the milling.
Sure, sure, sure. Um, when when you took over the company in 2004, you said,
Yes.
what size were you back then?
We were about 36 employees, I want to say,
Okay.
and about we were under $3 million in revenue.
Okay. Wow. So you've really changed that quite a bit. I mean, not
Yeah,
quite double the employees, but four times the revenue.
yeah.
Nice, nice, impressive. Um, and well, okay. So how can you kind of just tell the story about that growth? Was it just organic, kind of over the last 20 years? Were there any big moves you made that really helped you move the needle a lot?
Yeah, there were some big moves. We ran into a situation when we took over the company that uh, our dad, as he got older, was, like most business owners, when they get older and they're looking at retirement, they become more risk adverse.
Hmm.
So there hadn't been any major capital investment in equipment for a few years. So we had some catching up to do.
Yep.
So we started investing in 4-axis horizontals and pallet machines. And
Mm.
we just saw that's where the industry was going
So
with
it was
automation.
mostly verticals before that.
Before that, it was all verticals. Yeah.
All verticals. Okay.
Yeah. But we realized we needed the lights out manufacturing,
Sure.
'cause-
Sure.
yeah.
And what nature? I mean, we know the industries. Did you kind of were you always heavy in the industries that you still are today, or did you kind of move into some and get away from others?
Um, well, we were in an industry very heavily involved in an industry, the firearms manufacturing,
Okay.
from about 2008 up until about 2018, I want to say. Uh,
Okay.
but that business just kind of ran its course.
Mm.
Um, we wanted to head in a different direction into
Sure.
higher end things,
Right.
higher end aerospace and space components.
Okay. Um, so the move to automation and pallet pools in particular, did that particularly work well with the volumes you were doing, or do you do a lot of small batch sizes, or high mix, low volume, or what's your
It's
specialty
high
there?
mix, low volume,
Okay.
and yeah, it works well. It worked well for us in that. You just got to make sure you get your part density up on the
Sure.
tombstones, and just depends on the work statement, and the mix will
Yeah.
work a lot. But yeah, it's worked well, and we've done both high volume and high mix, low volume.
Sure. Sure. And have you guys ever had to move facilities? I imagine you probably have.
We have moved facilities. Well, in the history of the company twice, but really once, the company as we know it. We were actually in a customer's facility across town
Oh,
for the
really?
longest time, and then we ran out of floor space, and there was a constraint, and we needed our own identity. We ran into a situation where sometimes customers or potential customers would come in and they say, "Oh, well, you're a captive shop because you're in here," which was not
Hmm.
the case. But
Right.
when we ran out of space, we purchased a building that we're in now, and
Hmm.
and moved our entire facility.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, it's a beautiful facility. I've been
Thank
there.
you.
Um, so just wanted to dig in a little bit on the sort of revenue per employee question. So you're about 60 people, about 13 million. It's a lot more revenue per employee than you were when you took it over. And I imagine a lot of that has to do with the types of machines that you're running, and that you can get unattended runtime, and just a lot more revenue per dollar, or revenue per hour off the machines without labor having to attend to it. Is
Yeah, that's
you,
correct. And the difference in work statement as well. Doing more
mm,
complicated, more complex pieces where we can command, more money.
right? Okay, so less competition in a way, maybe there.
Um, I don't know about that. There's a lot of good shops out there,
Yeah,
but yeah, we definitely are moving ourselves towards the higher end stuff.
higher value add. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you keep track of how much, for a given dollar that you sell, how much of that is cost of goods that you spend with another vendor, material, plating, hardware, things like that?
yeah, sure, we do.
And do you have a rough idea of how much of that is out of pocket versus the value that you generate with your shop?
What do you mean?
So, like, at our shop, our total sort of out of pocket costs were typically around 10 to 20%. right? We'd sell a $10 part, and we had $2, 10 to $1 to $2 of material and plating. Whereas we occasionally would have a job where it was like 80% out of pocket, right?
Sure.
A super expensive material, and we only did a little bit of machining to it. And when I hear of companies' revenue numbers, especially compared to their employee count, a lot of times, a lot of that can be accounted for by the fact that they're just flowing dollars through the company to sub vendors, right?
Oh, right.
Versus others are creating a huge amount of value with the machining that they're doing internally.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty consistent. I think our material, typically runs 10 to 15%.
right. Yeah, yeah. Because you do a lot of aluminum stuff.
We
Probably
do.
is that
That's
is that the
that's
most?
the overwhelming majority. Yes, I'd
Yeah,
say probably 85 to 90% is aluminum.
yeah.
And
Yeah, your shop is super similar to my old shop in that regard.
yeah,
And that makes sense with the industries that you serve. Parts have to be
sure,
lightweight and strong.
right.
So, yeah, cool. And how do you think about diversification in terms of your client base? Obviously, you mentioned a number of industries. So, but yeah, love to hear your thoughts about the biggest client you have, what percentage they are, and how much is concentrated in one particular industry versus the others.
I'd rather not get into that in specific
Okay.
detail.
Okay. Sure. No problem. Um, do you have any just sort of guidelines that you try to work around with percentage of like I've heard that having clients 20 no client 20% of your business is a good rule of thumb.
We talk
But
about that. We talk about that a lot. That's a double-edged sword because yeah, that sounds good in theory to have
it varies as
to have 10,
clients.
10 customers that are 10% each. I don't know any shops that's the reality. Um,
True,
you always
true.
have, I don't know what the rule of thumb is. It's like the top, three customers or 80% of your business, something like
Yeah,
that. That's
for
usually how
sure.
it works, and we're
Yeah,
no different in that.
yeah.
Um, because
And it
customers say that too. We only want to be 10% of your business. Okay,
sure.
well, that's a double-edged sword, right? Because if you're only 10% of the business, then you don't command the power that if you're
Sure.
more than that. So it works both ways.
Yeah. And it varies. Sometimes we would have a client that came on super strong and just was dumping orders on us. And we'd try to grow our capacity to be able to meet that demand and still be able to serve others,
Right.
so they didn't become too big of a percentage. But sometimes in a single year, they'd be, a lot.
Yeah, we see the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they'll just place a monster PO and you're not going to say no. You know,
Sure. Sure. Um, I'd love to hear about how, everyone's facing difficulties finding employees these days. How you go about doing that, what your retention is like. Yeah, how do you engage with employees and make them love Western Precision and want to stay with you?
we've always had a philosophy where we try to run our company kind of like a family. People just feel part of it. They have ownership in what they do. They have pride in what they do. Our retention's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Attracting new people now is challenging for us, just like it is anybody, just because of the labor pool situation. So
Mm-hmm.
as far as that goes, we're doing cobots and pallet pools and as much automation as we can.
Mm-hmm.
Um, keeping in mind with our folks, keeping in mind that, hey, that's not to replace anybody. We're just
Right.
getting more done with what we have. And
Yeah.
everybody understands that.
Yeah. Do you have any stated core values that you have in the company?
Yeah, over the last couple of years, we've been working on implementing culture.
Mm-hmm.
So we have four cornerstones
Okay.
that are teamwork, innovation, win-win, and problem solving. So we
Okay.
use
I like
those as
those.
um, the cornerstones that we can use as guidance when we make day-to-day decisions or interactions with each other, with customers, with vendors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And do you share those with new prospects? And does it help you find people that are better aligned with those values? And do you fire on those values too?
So we're pretty new at the culture thing at the
Mm-hmm.
cornerstones. So it's still getting traction. Uh,
Okay.
it takes a while. It's not
Yes.
something that it's not something that you can just turn on and off and have it be effective. It
Hmm.
really needs to be organically sewn into the fabric, if you will.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's, I think it's a super important thing, but it's definitely a long-term journey to really get it instilled deep, because it only works if it's super deep. It takes
Exactly. And it
time.
takes a little while for people to understand. It's different than what we've done. We haven't done anything formal like that before. So it takes a little while to understand, okay, why are we doing this? Oh, okay, that makes sense. You
Hmm.
know, um,
Yeah.
because we don't want it just to be, buzzwords that get flashed around with nothing, no substance behind them.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you engage with any community colleges or other types of community engagement or workforce development? Um,
We have, yes. We try to get young people through the shop whenever we
mhm.
can. Of course, with COVID, the last couple of years, put a damper on that. But there's a college that's fairly local to us that has an engineering program. Who uh, An engineer from one of our customers actually retired and took a teaching job there.
Oh,
And
cool.
so before COVID, every year we were bringing, I believe, it's their sophomore level mechanical engineering students through.
Hmm.
We've done high schools. We do, um, manufacturing day whenever we can. So
Yeah.
yeah, we try to do our best to put, um, the, our industry's best foot forward, because I think we've developed a stigma somehow over the year that this is, dirty and dumb work, which is absolutely not true. So we like to, bring kids in, young people, and say, hey, here's what this really looks like. And a lot of times that has really positive um, feedback from them. Oh, we had no idea.
What?
And one of the questions is, well, how much money can we make doing this? So,
Sure.
how much do you want to apply yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. What are when they go through the shop, what are the things that make their eyes light up the most? I mean, do they like the cobots? Do they just the equipment or the parts themselves?
I'd say just the equipment in general, and
Hmm.
I think a lot of people go through their day to day, especially young people, not understanding where everything comes from.
That's for
You
sure.
just get in your car and drive away,
Hmm.
without appreciating where all those components came from. So when they come in and actually see hands on people working on it, high technology equipment, computers and all that, I think it really opens their eyes.
And have you been able to recruit some of the younger folks that have come through on tours?
Um, Not as full time positions, because usually they're taking a different path. Like maybe they're going to do the
Mm-hmm.
engineering path or
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
So no, not directly.
Okay. Yeah. At our shop, we were on the board of the local community college that had a machining program,
Hmm.
and that was a very direct path for full time employees, because we knew that the advisors there, the staff. Um,
Sure.
we'd have them come visit our shop. We'd help them with curriculum development, donate materials and tools, and they'd always tell us, which was sort of the cream of the crop every year, and get to
Hmm.
go try to recruit those kids.
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, are there any machining, real sort of technical machining programs anywhere near where you
Yeah,
guys
there
are?
there are a few around. A couple of them are really nice.
Yeah, yeah, you
Yeah,
might consider getting involved. That's a good pipeline.
yeah. We've been in contact.
Okay, yeah. Sometimes they're not always open, which is unfortunate,
Right.
because companies like yours are just looking to help,
Right.
and offering employment to their students is probably the number one gauge of success. So yeah. Um, so growing as much as you have is no small task. How do you go about doing your sort of go to market sales and marketing strategy? Do you have full time salespeople? Is it just you or your brother, or how do you do that?
No, we have somebody that a major portion of his job is business development.
Hmm.
Um, so actually, how do I say that? Yeah, so a major portion of his job is business development. Um, a lot of it's organic as well.
Okay,
Word of mouth. Um, Referrals from other customers.
right. Yep. Probably hopefully a reasonable amount of an engineer or a buyer moves companies and then calls you up
Yep.
from the new place.
Yep. We've seen that a
Yeah,
lot as
yeah,
well.
that's always
Yes.
helpful.
Yep.
Do you do any marketing, or is it just sales really?
We don't. We've done marketing in the past.
Hmm.
Lately, we haven't done very much of that.
Are you just so busy you just don't, you got plenty of backlog, you just don't need to be doing that as much?
Right now, we're busy enough that we don't need a whole lot more. Of
Sure.
course, we're still entertaining new opportunities
Right.
and still growing, but we don't have any big campaign going, so to speak.
Right. Was just looking back over the last maybe 3 4 years, 19, 20, 21, 22, has it been a nice progression up, or have you seen some ups and downs? I know some shops are slammed busy, others are still needing, keep spindles turning. What's that path been like for you guys?
Um, for the most part, it's been a positive trend.
Hmm.
With the aerospace stuff that happened a couple years ago, that dropping
Mm-hmm.
off. Yeah, we took a hit on that, but eventually we were able to develop new business in other industries that more than made up for it.
Okay. So you were serving the commercial aerospace, like 737,
Exactly.
787, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I know that was a very tough time for a lot of shops, and good lessons on being diversified across
Exactly.
industries, not
Exactly.
just clients within one industry. So,
Right.
um, how do you approach sort of financial transparency with your team? Do you share the numbers? How open book are you?
So one of our metrics that we use, in fact, we report it every day, is our revenue number, our sales number.
Okay.
So we have goals, and everybody is aware of those. It's posted out in the shop.
Nice.
Um, with our management team, we break it down a little bit more into, hey, here was our percentage of costs for materials and we
Right.
call it small tools, consumable carbides and things like that. So
Hmm.
we try to give them an idea on things that they can actually have control over.
Right.
You know, it's not their
Yeah.
responsibility how much our rent is or how much our electricity bill is or,
Sure.
how much the property taxes are, but
Right.
things that they can control. We like to keep them informed to, in a big picture view.
Right. And so for the whole team, is it sort of cumulative revenue for the month and you have a target that you're trying to hit, or is it revenue per day? Kind of how do you look at that?
It's both.
Okay. Yeah.
So basically we have a monthly goal, a yearly goal, and then
Hmm.
that gets broken down, to the daily
Right.
average. And then we have a production huddle every morning, and that
Okay.
the previous day's shipment numbers get reported in that meeting. So everybody knows every single day, or excuse me, the leads that are in that meeting know every single day,
Okay.
here's our goal. Here's what we did yesterday. And
Right.
it's good. People like that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And it's
Um,
really satisfying when they see that they're hitting their goal, or
yeah.
there'll be a day you just blow it out of the water, and it's
Sure.
pretty fun for people.
Yeah. How do you, so you just collect how many parts is it shipments that you made, that shipments that went out each day?
It's
Is that
it's revenue dollars.
okay? Yeah. Okay. Very good. Um, and do you have any kind of profit sharing, or is there incentive for them to help hit the numbers besides pride?
Not at the moment. That's something we've talked about, getting
Hmm.
something formalized like that, but no, we don't have anything implemented at this
Okay.
time.
Right. Okay. So besides revenue, what other metrics do you track?
We have a set of KPIs, quality,
Hmm.
on-time delivery,
Hmm.
number of NCRs, number of customer returns,
Yep.
things like that.
Okay. And are those shared with the whole company? Are those posted?
Yes,
And I imagine those are part of your ISO and AS 900
exactly.
QMS. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Um, very good. What do you find are some of your biggest challenges you're facing today?
Biggest challenges, of course, like we talked about earlier, the workforce, labor
Hmm.
pools, small, um, trying to work through those bottlenecks.
Hmm.
Uh, like we talked about before, diversification, that's
Hmm.
very important. Just keeping on that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, really, those are the two biggest ones, really.
Okay. Where you mentioned cobots, where are you putting your cobots?
Right now, they're on lathes, on turning centers.
Okay. Okay. Without bar feeders or with bar
They
feeders?
actually have bar feeders.
Okay.
One machine, it's only unloading the part. So in other words, we bar load the part,
Yeah.
but it's ID chucked, so we can't eject it. So the
Mm,
cobot unloads it off of
right.
the chuck.
Okay. Okay. And what is your shift schedule? Do you run multiple shifts or
We
just the
run
cobots run at night?
we run day shift and swing shift, and then we have a weekend shift.
Okay.
Um, but we don't have a graveyard, so we try to get the cobots and the pallet pools to work graveyard as much as we can.
Right. Yeah. And do you generally? So yeah, I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. I know when we were trying to get machines to run through the night back in the day, there's all sorts of obstacles and challenges, whether it's cutting tools, whether it's coolant management, whether it's just part density and how much cycle time you have, and not getting too dense so that the fixturing is super expensive, or if
Right.
you break a cutter partway through, you've scrapped a whole bunch of parts.
Right.
Can you share just some of your decisions and just kind of journey through that, trying to get that as
Well,
optimal as possible?
with reference to the cobots, we found that, and we expected this, but when we go to that level of automation and unattended runtime, with that many moving pieces, it always uncovers the next flaw in your process. Like you said, whether it be chip management, um, cutting tool life, um, little things like we were sawing the bar stock into pucks. Well, we found out one night that the saw cut one that was 20 thousandths too long, so the cobot didn't like that when it bottomed out on it.
Mm,
Chips in the lathe door, uh, just everything. Um, just kind of reared its head one by one until we got those knocked down, and finally they've all reared their head and you get them figured out, and then it runs really well. But it really brings to light little things in your process that you don't see when it's attended by a human. For
yeah,
instance, the chips in the door. If an operator opens the door to the lathe and there's chips on the door, instinct reflex is just to clear the chips out.
sure,
Well, the cobot doesn't know how to do that, so it just builds up, and then you're like, oh, that is a problem.
sure.
Um,
And so some of them are just machine, you know, um, based, and some I'm sure are part number based issues, right? You probably just dealing with all of them, so you get a new part number and you're trying to get it, um, dial in on the machine. It might build up chips in a slightly different way than another part number because the way you're cutting hogging super heavy, and just you run across things like that, and how do you go about solving each of those?
yeah, you run into problems from part to part, and there's a learning curve on a lot of things, especially as you get to do more complicated work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Thermal management of coolant and things like that that can
Mm,
affect parts. Um, even as far as we do a lot of parts that require 100% inspection on the CMM.
yeah,
So, it's little things like making sure everybody knows how to clean the part and what a clean part looks like, so it's not affecting your CMM results and giving you, bogus
sure.
bogus reports. Just all kinds of little things like that.
So when you are running that graveyard shift unattended, and then you have a bunch of parts you have to inspect, do you just kind of go heavy on the inspection the following workday?
Yeah, that's what we have to do right now
Okay.
without an automated inspection process. Yeah, they
Yeah.
kind of tend to bunch up and then get processed the next day.
And are you probing in the machine to just make sure your tools are staying, within
Yeah,
tolerance, kind of thing?
yeah, we do a lot of tool breakage detection for sure, and then we do some in machine measuring,
Hmm.
um, for alignment and size compensation and whatnot.
And are you making adjustments to your to your D and H value, like your tool comps, because of the measurements, or do you how do you manage that?
We have ran some parts where we run programming and then auto compensation. So
Okay.
you rough, semi finish, probe,
Yep.
auto comp, and then finish.
Right.
And yeah, so we have done that.
Okay. And on others, do you just go to a backup tool if a tool is getting, you know, too close to the limit or something like that?
Usually, we're not running sister tools. Usually, we
Okay.
do use tool life management, but
Hmm.
usually on most jobs that we do that on, we just change the tool out, um,
Right. Right.
because uh, we need to verify the very first part of the next tool. We
Sure.
don't just
Sure.
want to switch from one tool to the next and then have parts, mixed up in the parts catcher or whatever.
Yeah. So you mentioned automated inspection. Have you considered integrating a CMM into your machine workflow so the cobot takes it out, puts it right into the CMM?
Yeah, we've considered it. We just haven't got there yet.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, especially trying to close the loop and make sure
Yeah.
you're. But I know there are systems out there that do that. It's pretty blown away. I've never worked in one myself, but pretty amazing to.
Yeah, we saw some setup at IMTS that we're very interested in, to where they had um, a small, I think it's a Fowler Zcat,
Okay.
integrated into a gantry loading lathe. So
Hmm.
that was pretty neat to see.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The technology, even it's fun for kids to see. It's probably just as much fun, if not more fun, for us to see because we
Oh
really
yeah,
understand it.
yeah, and I've always been fascinated by this, even though I do it every day. So
Yeah.
for sure.
That's awesome. Speaking of IMTS, do you who is it that goes? Do you bring your team or certain leaders? Just
Yeah,
you?
we brought. I think the five of us went. So there was somebody from the office. I went. A quality manager went, and then tool crib manager, and then a person that does a lot of our robotics programming.
Hmm.
Yeah. So we try to cover, get somebody from sort of
Right.
a good cross section of the company. So we kind of covered all our bases.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome if everybody could go, but that's just not
Sure.
realistic.
Yeah, especially from the West Coast.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned tool crib management. That is not something that every shop decides is a worthwhile position to have. Can you kind of elaborate on what that person does, how long you've had that person, when you decided that was worth having, and
We've had a tool crib in place for a couple of years now. We went for the longest time without a tool crib, to where everybody managed their own, or excuse me, assembled and disassembled their own tools. We had
Mhm.
a vendor managed cutting tool system. Um,
Mhm.
and then a couple of years ago, we decided that, hey, a tool crib would be a good idea. So
Right.
we have it dedicated in the middle of the shop with a person that attends it full time. Um, she's done a great job with inventory management. Actually saves us a lot of money on inventory. I always thought, hey, a vendor managed inventory system, that's what everybody does. Well, I may be speaking a little bit out of turn here, but once we did this tool crib and switched away from that, and we started saving money on cutting tools, I'm like, that makes sense, because why would a vendor install a system in your shop to sell you less product?
Mm.
Like, um, I'm not saying that's what they did necessarily, but
Sure.
without having sort of a gatekeeper, um,
Right.
our cutting tool consumption went down with the implementation of a tool crib.
So, people were just being more careful with the tool life that they were getting, rather than just throwing things away sooner? Or yeah, can you you know?
I can't pinpoint exactly why in every
Hmm.
case, but I think it's just sort of path of least resistance.
Right.
If it's just easy to go grab another tool, um, like you said, break my tools down. I don't have time to put that end mill away, maybe, so I'll
Oh
just
yeah,
throw it
sure.
away rather than put it back in the drawer.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because either I'm not sure if it's still good, or I don't want to take the chance, or I don't have time to do it.
Right.
I think that's a lot of it probably came from that.
And you feel like the improvements in reduced tool spend and maybe some of the other benefits more than pays for that person, that tool crib person?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Um, what are the other benefits you've seen? Because I imagine she is kitting tools in advance of the jobs going on the
Yeah, we're
machine.
still working towards that.
Hmm.
We do that some. We're not as good at it as we need to be, but yeah, in our in Pro Shop, when we queue the tools, it goes to her dashboard, and she can kit the tools to the job and put them on a cart,
Hmm.
so that
Hmm.
the setup person, when they go to set the job up, they're all neat and tidy on the cart with the number. They know what to get, and they can take their old cart and just leave it for the tool crib person to
Right.
disassemble and clean.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've like reduced your setup times with things being prepped better?
Um, like I said, we need to do better with queuing
Mm-hmm.
tools and kitting
Right.
tools ahead of time.
Got it.
We're still getting there, but yes, when that happens, absolutely, it absolutely reduces setup time.
Okay. And then what was the other question I had regarding that? Um, it'll come to me. Um, I'd love to maybe change tactic and go maybe a little more on the softy, touchy feely side. What are some of the most memorable things that you know, of owning your shop? Stories or situations that you just fill your heart. Like, yeah, what is it that you love so much about it?
Oh gosh, where do where do I start with that? Um, to think about that a minute.
I can come back to it.
Yeah, let's come
Go to
back to it.
something easier.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, it seems like you guys are a pretty technology driven company. I'd love to hear your just general thoughts on technology adoption and digital transformation. You mentioned that you had catch up to do when you bought the company from your dad. So,
Mhm.
and then I also remember just a couple of weeks ago seeing a post on LinkedIn from you guys where there was this massive crane looking forklift thing that I'd
Oh
never
yeah.
seen anything quite that big. So clearly it was a very large machine. So yeah, how do you think about, technology and the machines you buy and sort of keeping in front of competition, things like that?
So I've always been very technology oriented.
Mm-hmm.
That's historically the way I've always worked. That's my go-to solution is technology rather
Mm-hmm.
than brute force. I love it. It's fascinating to me. Um, we have a lot of talented people here that help with that as well. So we just keep our, what we need to get done in mind and say, hey, what's the best way we can do this? What's the
Mm-hmm.
most efficient way we could do this? Or, how do we work smarter, not just harder? And
Right.
usually that's through technology.
And how do you think about replacing your machine? Like, do you keep machines for a certain defined period, or once you think that there's ones that are just a lot faster and more capable, you swap them out? Do you
You know,
always
we
buy
don't
new?
we don't have a set interval to where we swap machines out. In fact, we haven't in recent history gotten rid of very many pieces of equipment. We run
Mm-hmm.
high quality equipment, so it tends to last a long time.
Yeah.
Um, but we just like adding technology sort of at the end of the row, and then over time, that will just take over, and
Mm-hmm.
older things will drop off. But we don't have a set interval or a plan per se.
Right. Do you consider new equipment based on sort of the opportunities you're seeing in terms of, hey, we're seeing a lot more hard metals, we need to get something that's good at that, or this big 5 axis that you just bought?
Yeah, right now our concentration, what we're seeing in our work statement and our customer demand is automated 5 axis is really what we're concentrated on right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Besides the obvious less fixturing and work holding, any other just significant benefits you've seen from
Yeah, less
going that?
fixturing, and work holding, better first part quality since you can get more done in one operation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those are really the big ones.
So lower scrap rates probably as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Um, Cybersecurity is getting increasingly critical, especially in this industries that you serve, because some of it's going to be mandated.
sure.
I'd love to hear about what you're doing, the way you think about that posture.
Yeah, so like you said, a lot of it's mandated now. We outsource some of our IT, and then we have a person internal that does that. But we go off of best practice. What's mandated by
Mm-hmm.
government, and then customer requirements, and really that's how we do it.
Mm. Are you starting to see customers independent of the regulations flow down requirements to you?
We actually do see that, yes. Fortunately, for the most part, they're pretty congruent with each other.
Okay.
Um, mandate versus customer demand.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty similar from what we've seen so far.
Right. Do you have you had customers come and audit you for cybersecurity
We've had to fill out sort of self audit reports, but
questionnaires?
yeah,
Okay.
but no like on site audit or anything
Right.
like that.
So generally, the number one weakness in a company is the people. Getting phished and accidentally giving their credentials or something to someone. Do you guys do anything around besides just training? But I know there's companies that you can hire to fake fish you, or and
Oh,
see which employees might actually fall for it.
no, we haven't done that.
Okay.
but it's
Yeah.
other than general training, uh,
Right.
we haven't
Yeah.
gone that far.
Yeah. We're
And knock on wood, it hasn't been a problem.
sure.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Um, so over the last 20 years or so that you've owned the shop, can you think to some of the just sort of the best strategic moves that you've made, the best decisions that you made that help you get to the level you're at today?
Sure. Yeah. So I think when we bought the company and recognized the need for new technology, buying our first 4-axis pallet pool machine back in 2004 was kind of revolutionary for our company. It was something very different. Some people were scared of it. I wasn't scared of it. I knew it would work.
Hmm.
But that was a huge step for us. That's just one machine, but back in the day, that was a big deal to bring
Hmm.
something to go from just strictly vertical 3-axis machines to, automated 4-axis machine right off the bat. But that was a really big one. And
So
then,
so you did that the very first year you bought the company.
yeah,
You did it right away.
right away.
And that one had a pallet pool on it, or was
It
just a
has
two
6 pallets.
6 pallets on that one?
Yeah,
Okay. What
and
kind
it
of
was by
machine was that?
it was a Morisiki NH 4000
Oh yeah.
with a 6-station CPP.
Hmm.
And actually,
Nice.
now we still have the machine. It's in our 36 pallet cell, but we have another machine that's just like it that we bought, a few years later.
Right.
And then from there, the pallet pools just kind of sort of organically multiplied themselves, if you will.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, yeah. We bought when we were, as our company grew, we had all verticals, and then we bought. I'm trying to think of the order in which we did it. I think we bought a horizontal, standalone horizontal first, but then we bought a 3 spindle, uh, 25 pallet system. That was
Okay,
a with a big linear. It was an older one. It was a
sure.
Toyota, and it had a railroad track going between
Yep.
3 machines, and that was a
Yeah.
beast to figure out, man.
Our first pallet pool machine, we didn't intend to buy the pallet pool. We wanted to buy a standalone machine, but it was
Okay.
a year-end purchase that needed to be installed, and that's what the manufacturer had in stock.
Oh
So
wow, that's a
we said,
serendipitous.
"Yep." I knew it would work, though. I knew it
Uh
would work.
huh.
I was 100% confident. But it was
Right.
kind of funny. My brother and partner Bill, he's not a machinist, never has been. He likes to
Right.
say he doesn't even know how to turn a machine on,
Okay.
which is pretty much true. Uh, and he's very he likes tangible things. So
Hmm.
not being a machinist and not knowing this technology, we actually went to IMTS that year so he could put his hands on the machine and say, okay,
Hmm.
here's what it is.
Right.
Even though I was like, it's gonna work. It's gonna work. We don't really
Right.
have to go look at it. It's gonna work. It's like, I want to look at it. All right. So
So I'm curious to talk a little bit more about the transition between your father and you and your brother, because family transition is a huge topic in a lot of shops, and some
yep.
people do it super well, and other companies don't do it quite as well. Um, yeah, can you talk about kind of the arrangement? Did you buy him out over time? Was he involved, for years further, or was there a fairly clean kind of switch? Or
Yeah,
to
so
hear
you're
more.
right. Family transitions are challenging to a lot of folks, and I'm pretty proud of how we handled ours. Our dad, um, well, let me step back. So the way it happened was I've worked here. Hang on, let me start over. So what were we talking about? Family transitions.
Family transition, yeah. And,
Okay, so all right. So my brother's background was, like I said, in corporate management. Um,
mhm.
he was GM at a large metal distributor.
Okay.
Um, and he had never planned on working for Western Precision. And
Mhm.
he and our dad got to talking, and over time, he decided to come to work here as general manager. And that was exactly the same time I went off to college. I
Oh,
like to say
okay.
we basically we passed each other on the door, one going in and one going
Hmm.
out.
Right.
And then, like I said, after college, I came back to work here full time. And then, just 2 years later, I guess that would be, we purchased the business from our dad.
Hmm.
And we were fortunate because, like I said earlier, Bill and I had very different backgrounds, very different specialties. So there was never any headbutting. We trusted each other. We trusted each
Hmm.
other's decision making. We trusted each other's, advisories on things. And
Hmm.
then we were also able to work very well with our dad because his attitude was, "Hey, once you guys buy it, it's yours." There
Hmm.
was never any meddling,
Right.
never second guessing, always very interested. I mean, he'd call me up at night and talk shop, for 2 hours just because he still loved the company. But at that point, he's like, "Hey, it's your guys' company. Run it how you see fit."
So
So,
did he actually physically keep coming in after the transition, or was
no.
he?
In
No.
fact, he's semi-retired when Bill came on as GM. He moved to
Oh,
Eastern
I see.
Oregon. Moved to Eastern
Okay.
Oregon, was still involved in the company.
Right.
Still did the accounting on that side of the
Sure.
mountain.
Hmm.
Was still involved, and then over time, he's just stepped back more and more and more. And pretty soon,
Got
he
it.
was
Okay.
he was essentially um, not involved in the day-to-day operations. And then
Right.
um, once we purchased it, yeah, he was completely out.
So your dad must have been a pretty good manager and leader to get to the point where he didn't need to be part of the daily operations.
Yeah, he was always a very good people person.
Uh huh.
Um, you know, uh, he's
And probably good at delegating, I imagine too.
good at delegating,
Yeah.
good at motivating people. He was never a machinist really. He learned how
Hmm.
to machine parts out of necessity, but
Okay.
that's just because there were no employees to do it. So back in the day, he had to do it. But his strength was definitely on the people side of things, getting the right people in the right places, making people feel motivated and able to do what they need to do.
So that's super intriguing. Can we back up a little further still? Can you tell the story of your dad originally starting the company? Because I
Yeah,
don't
sure.
hear it that often of people that aren't technical folks starting a machine shop.
Yeah, so our dad had a background managing shops, not just machine shops. I mean, he worked at a plastic extrusion company down in California, a
Hmm.
window manufacturer. Just general management was really his
Hmm.
forte. And then he was general manager at a small shop um, to the west of here for about 13 years. And then him and one of the partners of that company decided to start their own company. So
Okay.
that partner split off. They joined up, started a very small shop. It was just them and one employee.
Hmm.
And then from there, uh, our dad and his partner were trading business with another gentleman because they did all milling work and this other guy did all turning work. So they started
Hmm.
trading work back and forth. And then our dad's partner was retiring. So um, again, still really small. It was just,
Yep.
one or two employees, I think. And uh, our dad and this other gentleman, kind of said, "Hey, we keep trading this work back and forth. Why don't we just partner up?" So they did. And that was kind of that. And it just, organically grew from there.
So did your dad buy the other shop, or just kept
Eventually,
being eventually?
eventually. So
Okay.
they merged together, and then eventually our dad purchased uh, his partner's
Got it.
portion of the business.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. So your dad's original partner was probably technical, like you are. He
Um,
was the machinist or knew how to run
well,
that
his
side of
very
things.
original partner was a tool and die maker by trade. Even
Okay.
though he
Yeah.
even though he didn't actually do that at their company, he ran the
Hmm.
office. But
Right.
yeah, that was his background.
Okay. Interesting. And so when you and your brother did take it over, um, did you get a loan and pay him out right away, or just pay him out with profits over the next few years, or how was that structured?
Um, we did a loan.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great that it went well. Like I said, I definitely have heard some horror stories about companies that it didn't go well, particularly
Yeah,
if there's more than one.
it can be very challenging with people
So,
getting their toes stepped on and button
so what is your
heads.
best advice for other companies to have it go well if they're facing that in the next few years?
From a family perspective, or just in general?
Yeah,
From a
some
family
of
perspective.
each. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the family thing, just like any other partnership, I mean, you got to trust each other. You have to have confidence in what each other does. Um, that's really the main thing that is built on. And then the family thing for some folks, can add a different dynamic into the situation because you're family. You know each other better than you're ever going to know, an arm's length partner. So
Mhm.
that can create problems for some people. But Bill and I have always had a really good relationship, as brothers and as business partners. So,
Mhm.
it was never really an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Just communication is, yeah, and trust. And
And
yeah.
trust is a huge thing.
Yeah. 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 As I look back on my career, I've been with my one partner since, well, as business partners since 97 and as friends since 93. So
Oh, wow.
that's, that's a long
That's a
time.
long time. Yeah.
And our other still since 2000. So yeah. Yeah. Could not have, couldn't be where we're at without good partners and a lot of trust.
Yeah. We actually have the third gen working here now too. My niece, Bill's daughter, works here. She's
Oh,
a
nice.
account manager for one of our major accounts, and she was heavily involved in something at Oregon State University called the Austin Family Business Program,
Okay.
to where they actually have a curriculum and workshops and materials that you can look at online. You can go to, in-person workshops. If you're a student, you can sign up for the classes, and it's all centered around family business and transitions and successions and dynamics of the family and the business and dynamics of the family with external people and how all that plays. It's pretty interesting.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Is that something that do you have to be local to do, or people could do that remotely?
They have some online stuff for sure.
And what's the name of the organization?
It's the Austin Family Business Program at Oregon State University.
Okay. Awesome. I'm sure we'll have some people look into that. So, for I alluded to this a little bit earlier. It seems like, and I'm actually writing in the middle of writing a blog about this. It seems right now there's a sort of a dichotomy in the machining industry. There's shops like yourself that seem to be doing really well, strong backlogs, growing. But I hear of other shops that are looking for work,
Mhm.
and that's always the case. But it seems like it's a little more striking right now, between like massive success and really really struggling. Um, have you seen that yourself in the industry? And any advice to those that might be struggling to get on the other side to success?
I think a lot of it right now is industry dependent. I think that's really playing that's a big factor right now.
Hmm.
A really big factor. If I had to give somebody advice, I don't know, that's a tough one without knowing the specific situation. But I think that, just it's important to always be looking at the next step, you know, keeping, um, keeping the future in mind, not accepting, well, that's the way we've always done it or status quo. Just accept
Hmm.
change, accept that it's going to change. That's what they change. Change. The only constant is change, right?
Yes.
I just think that's important to keep in mind, big picture overall. Um, yeah.
You mentioned that you serve the space industry. How did you how did you get into that specific? I imagine you're talking about like commercial space, not aerospace. But
Yeah.
how did that? Yeah, how did you get your foot in that door?
We had a contact in the industry that, people know people,
Hmm.
just like that.
Right.
So we just
And did
started
it?
off small and just kept
Have
growing
you
it.
been serving that industry for a while now?
A couple years. I
Couple of
think
years. It's not super long.
going on 3 years.
Okay. Okay. And it's a growing part of your business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I know it's a. Uh, I've heard from folks saying, we have our ITAR, we got our AS9100, we're pursuing CMMC, but we just can't get our foot in the door, like with any space companies. How do you do that? And any advice to them?
I mean, like I said, the reason we got in is because we knew somebody
Yeah.
that had contacts. Um, we took it on, performed well, and it just grew
Hmm.
from there.
Yeah.
Um, but it is a
Yeah.
it is a very demanding industry. They expect performance, and
Oh yeah.
so if you do get your foot in the door, you have to you know make sure
Be
you
ready
perform.
for it.
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 Nothing worse than getting a first shot and falling on your face.
exactly.
That is a
It's hard.
tough way to succeed.
Hard to recover from.
Yes, absolutely. Um, so if you it's also a time where I've seen just all the time, particularly on LinkedIn, just new shops being formed, which is amazing. People following their dreams. What would be your best advice to new shops that are starting out, or shops that are maybe not started? They're just smaller but are wanting to grow. Like, what's your best advice?
Yeah, so looking back on our experience here at Western Precision, what I would say to a small shop or one that's just getting started is um, keep the future in mind. Like I said a minute ago, act like you're bigger than you are.
Mm,
Because I've found what happens is you grow and grow and grow and grow and grow, and then you kind of look around and you go, "Oh man, how did we get here?" So to the extent possible, it's not like a startup shop's going to go, implement SAP or something crazy like that, but implement some sort of ERP, run
mhm,
travelers in your shop or routers or whatever you want to call them. Have an inspection department, no matter how small it is. Just have those seeds planted so that when you need to grow, you're not starting from scratch, and you could just
mhm,
organically make those little things bigger and bigger as you need them, rather than
mhm.
getting way far into it and being like, oh man, now we need ERP system.
Right.
Because it's hard. It's hard when it's like trying to work on a car driving down the road.
Sure.
So if you can
Yeah.
get that stuff set up from the beginning, I'd say just do it. Even as monotonous and meaningless it may seem, to have a two-person shop and have routers printed out or whatever, however you want to work
Hmm.
that. I think it's important.
Hmm. Yeah, I've often thought about that, and people particularly ask me about that in relation to the employees they have. You know, and they were like, I wear like 20 different hats in a day, and that is my role, just to be sort of a little bit of everything. And the way I suggest they think about it is to really understand sort of which hat you're wearing at the time that you're doing an activity,
Hmm.
right? Am I doing a setup machinist activity? Am I doing a bookkeeper activity? Am I doing an inspector activity or a quality manager activity?
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
and then define those roles. And this all comes back actually to this book that we read years and years ago called The E-Myth, um, and just the importance of defining those roles and being able to ultimately replace yourself in the least strategic roles, right?
Hmm.
Maybe being a parts operate, a machine operator is the first thing you don't want to do anymore. It
Right.
just takes hours and hours per day. So defining what is the metrics for success for a machine operator, and then hire them to free up that 4 or 5 6 hours a day to do
Hmm.
something more important, and then do it again and again and again.
Yeah,
And
that makes sense.
as you said, if you're thinking about what you're going to look like in the future, what will my shop be like when I'm a 20 person shop, a 30, 40, 50, 60 person shop? What are the systems we need? What are the roles that we need? Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah, and I understand. Like it could seem very um, like a waste of time at first, but I really firmly believe that combination of what I'm saying and what you're saying, I think putting things
Yeah.
like that in place will pay off exponentially very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. It's always a good reminder, particularly as it relates to the org chart. Um, you know, when I hear actually people, and I can't remember if I wrote a blog about this. If not, I'm overdue for it. I don't think most shops, especially small shops, they don't have an org chart, right? They're just, it's like, here, come do this role, right?
Yeah, sure.
But where exactly does that fall? Who's responsible for what metrics, right? You do your metrics every month. And you probably know different leaders. I am the owner of this metric, right?
Right.
And then everyone works towards all of them, of course. But yeah, when it's unclear about who's responsible for what, it's hard to grow and take on new responsibilities.
Yeah, and we're not perfect in that either, but you're absolutely correct in that.
It's always a journey. It's
Yeah.
always a journey. Yeah. Well, is there any last bit of advice you'd like to leave with our audience?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Okay. Have you thought about some of the things you love the most, or just a really memorable experience in your past?
Gosh, there's so many of
Clearly,
them,
you love
right?
the technology. Clearly, you
Yeah,
love the
sure.
technology.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'd say that's one of them. Like when we first bought our first nice, if you will, piece of Japanese equipment, that was
Mm,
sort of the light bulb starting to come on, and then you know buying into the automation, that was the next huge step. And seeing those things grow over time is certainly fascinating, very satisfying.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jerry, thank you so much. I know you shared some wisdoms that people will definitely learn from and take home and hopefully implement in their own shops. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you
Yeah,
sharing.
thanks for having me, Paul. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.